Hey there. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to Chris Ballew. It's been 3 decades since this Seattle musician led the presidents of the United States of America to the top of the charts with hits like Lump and Peaches, and almost 10 years since they quietly disbanded. But life is still peachy for Ballew. He remains as prolific and productive as he's ever been, if not more so. He just released Power Trip, his sixth solo album in 3 years, and part of an ongoing series of LPs that arrive like clockwork every 6 months. Mixing psychedelic pop rock with impressionistic lyrics, his new songs echo the quirkiness and individuality of the presidents, but from an older, wiser, and more mature perspective. On the same day as his old band turned up as a clue on Jeopardy, Ballew got on Zoom from his in-laws' house to talk about songwriting, being roommates with Beck, getting high with Mark Sandman, and plenty more. Enjoy.
Hi,
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
real good. How are you?
I am good today, thanks. Where are you? You said you're on the East Coast?
Yeah, I'm in, well, sort of mid-Atlantic. I'm in Ohio. I
Oh,
guess that
that's not the East Coast at all, yeah.
I know. Well, it's the same time zone as New
Sure.
York, Boston, blah blah blah. So effectively, yes, for timing purposes, I am on the East Coast. But my wife's parents and family are from here, and I have old friends that live here, and we come like 2 or 3 times a year at this point to visit her parents and friends and stuff. So we're here for a month hanging out.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, it's a nice change of scenery from Seattle. But then when we get back to Seattle, we're just like, why did we leave?
Yes, well, that's my experience every time I go to Seattle too.
Oh yeah,
Why did I ever leave? Huh?
where are you based?
I live right in the center of Canada in Winnipeg.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
I don't think you've ever been here.
Oh, to play music and stuff. I don't think so either. No, we've done
No.
Vancouver and Montreal and Toronto and those kind of places, but
Right.
we tour with an amazing Canadian band called Chicks Dig It from
Oh, of
Ed.
course, yeah.
They were our favorite opening act of all time. They were so great. I mean,
What made them so great?
they played for 20 minutes. They didn't wear people out. They were hilarious. They were really tight. Their songwriting was super funny, but also really like kind of angsty and in all the right places. They were really cool people to
Hmm.
hang out with. Just overall, great. Yeah, loved
Yeah.
it. The short, concise 20-minute, just like, attack the stage, shred everybody's ears, and then leave.
Well, that's not a way of doing things unlike your own, really.
Yeah, kind of. Although we, pretty quickly got accustomed to, an hour 10-minute sets, which got harder and harder as we got older.
Yes, it'll do that to you. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let's talk about your new album, which is Power Trip. And if
Yeah.
I've got my calculations right, this is the sixth album in 3 years, put out in 6 month increments in January and July. So,
Right.
what's the concept behind this whole series
Yeah.
of things?
Well, I think it's kind of a common story maybe, but the pandemic shifted everything for me. So I was hot and active with Casper Baby Pants, which was my kids' music thing. And I was, how many? I think I was in year 11 of that. And I put out 16 records already when the pandemic hit. And I had a full slate of shows on my calendar. And I remember looking at my calendar before the pandemic was a thing and just thinking, I need a year off. I need to just reset. I
It's
just
your fault.
Yeah, I know. I know. And I do have a history of asking for what I want and the universe delivering. So I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry, everybody. It was my bad. Um, yeah, so it kind of, while also being a tragedy on so many levels, I think, became an opportunity for a lot of creative people to reassess and reevaluate. And I was one of them. And so I ran an experiment where I was a little overdosed on being in my studio during the early part of the pandemic. I finished 3 records, Casper Baby Pants records, and then I doled them out during the pandemic. But when those were all finished and buttoned up, I took my whole studio and put it away in boxes and didn't do anything goal oriented with music. I just played every day, but I didn't have a goal. And that was something that I really lost when I was in the Presidents. I lost the ability to play for pure joy in the moment, because the voice in my head saying, is that a hit? Should you develop that? You know, like, don't miss the opportunity to, you know, nail another hit song or whatever. And it became impossible to just enjoy the moment. So I took that opportunity to do just that. And it went on for about 9 months. And as I did it, I kind of was like, oh, I own some distortion pedals. Let me plug those in. Because with the kids' music, I hadn't played with the distortion. Sure. And I kind of slid back in time to when I was really into like this band from England called Loop and Spacemen 3. And then current bands I'm into like Moon Duo and Earth, and these like kind of repetitive, heavy, trancy, you know, vibrations. And I started playing with that. And simultaneously, I discovered Ram Dass and Alan Watts and their sort of philosophies about existence and consciousness. And these are things that I've always toyed with and played with, but never really allowed to be front and center lyrically. But they started to become that. And I started to come up with these phrases that had to do with their philosophy and sort of my gut feelings about being a human alive in a meat suit. So all that started to coalesce, and then I put my studio back together. And as was true for the Presidents and was true for Casper, once I get a purpose and a palette together, songs just explode out of me. I kind of need to know, like, what am I trying to make the listener feel or do? Like with the kids' music, it was very specific to what a family might need in a car where they're hot and hungry and tired and they all have to pee. And so I would make music for that family and imagine, I'd close my eyes as I mix and imagine, and usually go, all right, that tambourine or that banjo or that ukulele, they're too much, out. So anyway, this is another purpose, but the purpose here was more like an internal headphone experience. The songs I'm writing now aren't really designed to be played live. They're more designed for an individual to enjoy in their own headspace and sort of travel in that internal world rather than like an external, are you ready to rock kind of thing, which I got a little tired of back in the day. So yeah, that's kind of the seed. And then when that volcano erupted and just became this sea of songs, I quickly enlisted a couple of good friends. Pete Droge, one of them, singer-songwriter. My friend Mark Heberlein, who is a deep record collector. And then just in the last couple records, I've enlisted Christopher Robinson, who's a novelist friend of mine, who is very forensic with deciphering purpose in songs and writing and stuff. So anyway, I got these guys on board, and it's kind of like having a band, but I don't insult anybody's feeling, or I don't hurt anybody's feelings when I want to delete all the drums and start over because I'm working alone, right. Which turns out to be kind of my natural habitat, working alone. It's really, I struggled to be collaborative in the President's days, and I struggled with kind of, having a clear vision for how the song should go, but then struggling to be open to a collaborative relationship with Dave and Jason, so that their input had an influence on the outcome. But working alone has been fantastic because I can be ruthless, and I can erase the entire guitar or sing it over, or decide, oh, this is in the wrong key and it's supposed to be a ballad, not a rocker, or whatever. So it's really been fun. And with all the songs I've got going, I just decided, I'll set a goal for myself to do 2 records a year. And the way I work is I'm always working on a giant batch, about a 70 or 80 song wad of songs. And I'm just like, I'll just pick one, turn it on, and then go, oh, the bass is a little low, or maybe it needs a new groove. And then when it comes time, like 3 months or 4 months before an album release, I send my co-producers a batch, like what we call the too long album. It's like 20 songs instead of 13 or 14. And then they help me kind of decide which should be on and how they fit together. And That takes about a month, and then I hand it in, and then I don't listen to it until it's release day. So I give myself the treat on release day of listening to the album, having forgotten what's on it,
Well,
basically. So that's kind of why I'm doing these like scheduled things, because it's just become this fun arc of like self-discovery and learning how to use time to work alone and make critical decisions, stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the nutshell of the whole thing, and it's just been a really rewarding thing. I've been going back in time and taking songs that I wrote when I was a teenager in the 80s, when I had monophonic synthesizers and drum machines, and I had a fake English accent I used to sing with. It's just really, really embarrassing stuff. But inside those songs are these little shreds of DNA that are totally relevant to what I'm doing now, kind of thematically and maybe musically. So it's been super fun to cherry pick all these fragments from my past, which I spent about 4 years digitizing all these cassettes and
right.
naming everything. And so I have in my iTunes or Apple Music, I guess it's called now, I've got like 5,000 fragments that I can kind of mine. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, but that's been a really rewarding, like closing loops that I started in 1982 has been super rewarding. But anyway, that's my elevator pitch, that the elevator has gone through the roof of the building and is flying toward the moon.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a long elevator ride.
I know. Yeah.
Um, let's talk a little more about those lyrics, because that was one of the things I found fascinating about this album and some of the others, is that there's a lot of they're almost like dreams in a way, or they're vaguely surreal and psychedelic. They're often first person,
Yeah.
and you're in a place, you're in a boat, you're in the stars, you're on a cloud, and you're
Yeah.
trying to, I don't know, do something, get somewhere, progress, evolve. uh, I'm not sure do you know what you're after when you're writing these things, or do you sit back afterwards and go, geez, what does this mean, or
Yeah.
what?
Well, I've always admired writers like Beck and Robin Hitchcock and people like that who can traffic in um, that sort of density of poetry. I was always like a little more, I like a little density in the poetry, but also in the Presidents and in Casper. I was setting a scene, and there are characters in the scene, and they have an arc, and it's kind of a little play or whatever. And in this new stuff, it's definitely more impressionistic, and the lyrics come from somewhere else. Really, a lot of the lyric writing I do now is just patience, and having my like radar on or something. It's funny. It's almost like I'm catching the lyrics from somewhere else rather than generating the idea from inside myself. On some of the songs, some of them are directly related to this form of talk therapy that I have done in the past called Hakomi, or parts work. And it's where you identify all the like crowd of ego personalities that you have inside yourself. There might be the judgmental side, or the addictive side, or the people pleaser, or whatever. And so the idea with that therapy is you negotiate with those parts empathetically. And so a lot of these songs in the early stages, especially of these albums, were sort of song versions of me negotiating with my ego parts. Um, so yeah, it's about that internal dialogue, internal sort of negotiation with yourself that you go through to finally find peace of mind, or to find peace of mind along the way. I don't really believe that you kind of arrive at enlightenment. I think it's more of a thing that happens in bits and pieces as you ride the hills and valleys of like the journey of self-awareness. So it's kind of about that. It's like the journey for self-awareness, the journey for peace. And in the process, I'm enjoying kind of being unflinching about the hard parts of that and the dark parts, and kind of giving voice to those thoughts. And it's first person because I've really kind of, for the most part, there's a few here's what's up with you kind of things, or more here's some inspiration for you. I love Jose Gonzalez and Junip because I think his songs are like that. They're very generous, like, here, don't worry, I've got you kind of thing. But I also come from a background where there was a lot of hardcore punk rock songs that are like, here's what's wrong with you, here's what's wrong with you, you know what I mean? And I always kind of bristled at that, like, why don't you maybe start with yourself? Maybe you're not the healthiest. uh, so anyway, that's the idea. Is I just wanted to sing about what I can refer to in my experience, and I know it might come off a little solipsistic or whatever, but I just figure the first person sort of perspective is really all I know. I don't know what's right for other people, but I can tell other people what I'm, dealing with, and that's
Yeah.
kind of why I chose that.
So have you found this process therapeutic in a way, in that sense of you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a really, I mean, I don't think what really generates progress for me is every day I do yoga, I do meditation, I exercise, I walk, I eat clean. I've been a year plus off alcohol and drugs, and just kind of, figuring out who I am without those influences. And so those kind of processes are like sort of the real, I don't know, the real creative process or project. The project is kind of endeavoring to just be who I am and be okay with the dark and the light. But the songs are like sort of like little, how could I describe it? Like they're little encapsulations of a moment in that process, right? Like I'll come up with a little turn of phrase that describes something I'm struggling with, and then it's like, that just feels like a song title. And then a lot of times it's patience. Like in the old days, like when I was having that feeling like, ooh, this might be a hit, I would kind of reach out and try to grab the song and kind of, don't let it go, don't let it go. But these days, I like a song title might float in, and it might take 2 weeks for lyrics to start to flow, and then in the meantime, a musical thing might float in, and it turns out they belong together. But I didn't know it when they emerged. So it's been a lot more of like a companion to my regular practice, and it's part of it, and it's also like sort of little little moments where some sort of messaging just kind of floats in, and I just have to catch it.
Right. That's interesting though, that now you're sort of just letting it happen at its own pace as opposed to
Yeah,
chasing it all the time, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and it's really, it came out of that silence that I took, that 9 months of, well, not silence, but
yeah,
9 months of not being goal oriented, or not having that sort of sensation that the song was going to evaporate if I didn't, pour myself into it.
right.
So yeah, that's been a real, that the pandemic on that level was an incredible gift.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, has it changed you aside from the notion of letting things happen in their own time, in their own way? Has it changed you as a songwriter in terms of the nuts and bolts of it, in terms of the way you physically write a song and arrange a song and instrumentate a song?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm working with like I love the way acoustic guitars and synthesizers kind of coexist, and
Hmm.
or the way like clean and fuzzy. I love crafting these songs. Like it's really satisfying to like some of, like there's a song on my new album called Crashing Wave. It was written way back during the first album's songwriting phase, as it was called Feel It. I Feel It or something, or Feel, I can't remember, something like Feel It. It was very abstract. Anyway, that song has been reshaped and cut up and stretched and rewritten. A lot of times it's like this long process to tease out the purpose, because I really feel like every attempt at a song has a purpose, but sometimes it's really hidden under a lot of pretense or style or noise. So recording for me has been this like also really long, in some cases, super long form, patient experience, which is so different from like, all right, we have 2 weeks, like with the Presidents, like we have 2 weeks at a very expensive studio to make this album. And it's got to follow up our
The red
massive,
lights on.
yeah, exactly. And the red light's on and the money's just churning and clock's ticking and all that stuff. So, and I never liked that. I came from, a long decades of four tracking and just sort of making music for myself for fun, that wasn't really meant for anybody's ears except mine. So yeah, I just never gelled with that atmosphere. And so that's a big shift. And even with the Casper stuff, it was like a little more like what I'm doing now, but it was a little more, it wasn't, clocks ticking, but it was very intense, like, oh, that song might be evaporating. Let me grab it. Let me grab it. So anyway, that's been a really great evolution, is to sort of allow myself to take a long look at a song. It might take years for a song to kind of finally rest where it's meant to be. And the Crashing Wave I love because it really, it became a single, which before it was just like a garbage song that I was like, I don't know what I'm trying to say there. It's so abstract. So anyway, yeah, that's been fun. The
I
patience.
like the fact that you mentioned, reusing songs and revisiting songs, because that's nothing new for you, though, from what I can get the sense. And looking at your webpage where you've got a lot of your older music up there, it is oh, and then here are songs that ended up being president songs that are from things
Yeah.
you did years before. So it seems you have kind of a history of going back and saying, here's a song I wrote X number of years ago, and let's revisit it and see what it. And so when you do that, what's that based on? Is it that there's something in the song that you think will, needs to be brought forward into this new project, or I'm just wondering about the thought process that goes behind, reaching back for
Yeah.
that old song and pulling it forward.
Yeah, well, the seed of that impulse is definitely like in the 2000s. So the presidents broke up in 98. And then in 99 and 2000, that era, we started a band with Sir Mix-a-Lot called Subset.
Right.
And that was super fun. It was just a really liberating project. And he turned me on to recording with a computer. I was recording it with 8-track cassette up until that point. So I remember handing him a cassette of ideas for songs, and he's like, "What am I supposed to do with this? You got to send me files, man." So I was like, "I don't know how to do that. What do I do?" So he gave me a laundry list, yeah, things to like buy and how to. And then I watched how he worked with Pro Tools and kind of got over the visual part. Anyway, that sort of led into an appreciation for DJs, like Mr. Dibbs. I think he's from Atlanta. He became like my favorite DJ. Or that sort of avant-garde music like Square Pusher I got really into. And that music was interesting because it seemed like a lot of cases there was no definitive version. It'd be like, here's the January mix, and here's the April remix, and here's somebody taking it and remixing it again, and here's my original demo, and then I'm remixing that. And so I kind of, having grown up with the Beatles, and then getting my hands on in the 90s, getting my hands on those anthology CDs and hearing how they demoed toward the ultimate version, sort of reinforced this idea that I'd grown up with, is that there is an ultimate version and that is it, and then you're done.
Right.
And that pressure, I used to put that pressure on myself, like this recording has got to have all the bells and whistles from all the demos. It's got to have that, the menu of moments from before has got to be represented, versus like, let's just tear it down to its tiniest little fragments and then build it up in a new way. So yeah, that culture really influenced my attitude about finality and plasticity, as far as, when you're finished or not with a song. It's kind of like doing a drawing, but then drawing over it and erasing parts and keeping it. So I just feel like songs don't just live in one form or in one era. They can kind of fade in and out of relevancy as they I don't know. Yeah, I should have ended the sentence there.
That's okay. We'll say you did.
say
But that's
it.
interesting for a guy who is obviously so incredibly prolific, because for most artists, I think the best song is the newest song, or
Oh
the
yeah,
one that's coming. And especially when you say you've got this kind of rubber band ball of 80 songs that you're always bouncing around, to
that's
then go, "Oh, but you know what? There's something there's some reason that makes me want to go back to this thing I wrote 20 years ago and pull out this chunk of it."
yeah, and it's a mixture. Like the new album, like all the albums, have songs that are really fresh on them, not too fresh. It's funny. I feel like songs are like wine or something that needs to age. I guess bourbon or something. If I write, like, say, I have to hand in the next record in mid-April, for a July release. If I write a song today, it will not be on that record. Songs need to mature at least beyond the next album cycle, because so many times after I get over the pride and the sort of like, patting
It's the
myself
best
on.
song ever. Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time when I write a new song, oh man, I listen to it over and over, like this is the greatest. But there's no way it's going to be on the next record. It's got to wait a whole cycle, because oftentimes later, with feedback from my co-producers in some cases, but also I just decide, oh wait a minute, this is the wrong key, or it's too aggressive. A lot of times I will, in the early stages, I allow myself to throw too much on. I'm just like, I want to put this guitar on and that guitar on, and so it's also later I get perspective, and I need to do what and Nancy Wilson, Pete Droge told me that Nancy Wilson from Heart coined this term. I think she coined it, maybe not, but she used to say, now that we've recorded the whole song, let's have a mute party and just start seeing what we can mute and getting rid of. And like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, there's the song. The song is under all this crap that I did because I was excited.
Right. No, I get it. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Time is a really huge partner in this whole process too.
Yeah, well, obviously, and I mean that's from what you've been talking about, all aspects of it in terms of, as you said, the songwriting and this and that, and so it's all about really just having the time to do it. So, how long do you see this series going forward?
Yeah. Boy, I don't know. Right now, I'm sitting on something like 85 songs that are not released, that are really pretty finished. I got kind of ahead of myself, which is one reason I was excited about this Ohio trip, because I was like, I need a break from my own sounds and my own process. So I don't know. I mean, they're not all winners. I really have a very strict quality control filter. I do my best. Like, I'm not saying I make the greatest albums or they're going to be wildly popular. In fact, I really feel like I'm a hobbyist, and I'm just doing this now for myself and for fun and for whoever comes across it. I like to think of people finding it, and if they do get into it, it's kind of like a diamond in a dog shit. They're like, oh my God, this is actually really good, and I had no idea, or whatever. So I kind of like being, flying under the radar a little bit. But so all that said, I don't know. I'll just write it till it's done. It's funny. My whole life has been these like arcs. And when I'm in the arc, like the President's, I was like, I can't imagine doing anything else. And then it kind of naturally arced. And then the other things came up. And then the Casper Baby Pants thing came up. And in the middle of that, I was like, I'm doing this for the rest of my life. And then it arced. And so I just have to ride these things till they arc and finish. On the side, I'm doing visual art. And that's something that kind of every so often I get inspired and I just write. That one's kind of more like, here's an arc and then nothing, and then here's an arc and then nothing. So every so often I have a art show on Vashon Island where we live at this gallery there that is nice enough to just let me have a show whenever I have enough stuff. So that's been kind of a fun, like, I'm overloaded on music, I'll do art. Anyway, bottom line is I'm going to write it as long as I can. What I'm doing is every 4 records, I'm putting out sort of a collection of my favorite songs from the 4 on vinyl. And so I'd like to have it be a multiple of 4. I think maybe I'll definitely get to 8 for sure. I think I'd like to get to 12. I think 12 is maybe my goal. But again, quality control is king. So if I don't get to 12.
Right. So looking back on the President's Days, what's your perspective on that now? It's been about a decade, and obviously, like you talked about, while you're in it, you're consumed with kind of, taking advantage of all those things that are coming at you and living in the moment and rushing from place to place. Now that you've had some time to sort of, reflect on it and look back on it, how has that changed for you? I imagine that it's a lot easier now to enjoy the parts of it that were there to enjoy that you might have forgotten about in the moment of it.
Yeah, actually, we got to do that while we were doing the band. I mean, we were together for 4 years. I got really intense, really fast. I kind of wanted to pull a Sex Pistols and just break up right in the midst of the first record and just freeze ourselves perfect. I was kind of like, I'm ready to get back to my 4-track and just sort of keep exploring. But When you're riding, what I used to say is when you're riding a pony that's shitting gold bricks, you hold on for dear life and ride as long as you can.
I'm putting
So
that on a throw pillow, just so you know.
yeah, ride that shit brick pony or whatever. Shit brick pony, that might be a song. Who
There
knows?
you go.
Um, so we did that for 4 years and we broke up rather abruptly. Like I went to a band meeting and just said, first order of business, I quit. Um, and so it was kind of harsh and sudden.
What was the
And
second order of business?
there was none. That's why I wanted to go first.
Yeah.
So we did our final show in January of '98 at the Paramount in Seattle. Bye bye, everything was shut down. And then we made a record in 2000 called Freaked Out and Small. It's kind of a long story, but it was just a recording thing only. We recorded a bunch of my songs that didn't work on our 2 and 3 string guitars. We did them on 4 and 6 string, basses and guitars. And that was a really fun record. And it was just 10 days, super loose. We had no pressure, just made this super fun record and started Subset at the same time. So while we were broken up, we did a record and started a band with Sir Mix-a-Lot and toured and made a record that we never released.
Right.
And of all people, Chris Novoselic, we got these offers to reunite would come in every so often. And we're like, no, no, no. And then Chris Novoselic from Nirvana asked us to be his backing band at a award ceremony. He was getting some sort of award from the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences for his political activism, I think. And he wanted to perform 4 songs. So we appeared as the Presidents with Chris Novoselic. And that was the first time where we went, oh, this is fun. We could do this again. So we did a reunion show. Right. And to your point, what happened when we did the reunion show and kind of rehearsing for that show, we had this, at least I had this very strong sensation that we were the world's greatest president's cover band, meaning like my ego had removed from the experience and I could just hear the songs and I loved them. I like these. I remember listening to the debut after not hearing it for a long, long time in 2002 and just going, that's a great song. And that's a great song. And that's a great song. And like just feeling so good. So we really did get to kind of enjoy the fruits of our labor after a break in a really beautiful, fresh way. And we connected with new audiences. And then Dave left in 2004. We didn't want to stop. And Jason and I didn't want to stop. So we got Andrew McCaig to replace Dave Dederer. Went on for another 13 years. So I made 3 more records. No, 2 records. We made Love Everybody with Dave. And then These Are the Good Times People and Kudos to You with Andrew. And just, had a good time. We didn't pressure ourselves to achieve, former glory or anything. We're just enjoying it. So we had that. So now when I think about that phase, it's just warm and fuzzy. I just love thinking about it. Not to the point where I want to do it again. we do get crazy offers from Australia
I would suspect, yeah.
Yeah, crazy. But we have learned, we've been burned by crazy Australian offers. If it's too good to be true.
Haven't we all?
Yeah, haven't we all? Everybody wakes up to an email from an Australian promoter saying, well, here's what we'll pay you to come down.
Exactly. Talking about the belovedness or this is the greatest song, that's a great song. That reminds me of when I saw you guys, which was 2003. You played at South by Southwest.
Yeah.
And I saw that show.
Joe Jackson was on the bill later in the day.
Who was, sir?
Joe Jackson.
Yes, exactly. That night. Yeah, exactly. That show. And what I remember is, you started with Kick Out the Jams, but then you said something that was just like the softest, most gently anti-Bushy kind of thing.
Oh.
And not in a Dixie Chicks kind of way. I mean, I think you literally said, we used to think our name was funny when we had a liberal president, and now we don't think it's so funny. And really the softest kind of softball Bush dig you could make on stage. Anyway, this giant cowboy standing 6 feet away from me immediately started screaming obscenities and threatening your lives from the crowd, instantly just wanted you to die. And then you said, and this next song is called Boll Weevil. And he went, oh, I love that song. And immediately just started dancing like a child. which to me would just summed up the power of your music to just like dissipate all anger and
Right. That's funny because so we used to get asked, are we political because of the name, right? And the name was chosen because it's so ludicrous. It's like, it kind of it's kind of a little nod to like when I was growing up in the 60s, 70s, there was that meme of like, well, maybe, have a son because maybe your son can grow up to be president. It was just sort of this funny thing that was floating around. And so, yeah, the name is just ridiculous because we're just these dorks with weird guitars, and there's no way we will ever achieve that kind of influence or whatever. But uh, yeah, I remember answering that question, are you political? We would say, well, yeah, it's the politics of joy. Like, we want to show you what it sounds like to be on the other side of the struggle. Like
Yeah.
we're over here having either skipped or worked through all of our anger. And if you want to join us, you can join us. So that was kind of our politics of joy answer back in the day.
Perfect. Yes. And
Yeah.
you mentioned Beck, who obviously that was the first time I saw you. It was 1993, and you were in Beck's band, and you guys played in
Right.
Seattle at this. It was a roller rink, I
Yeah,
believe.
it was DV8 it used to be called Scoochies. I actually used to work at the amusement park right across the street as
Wow.
a roller coaster ride operator. So sometimes I would leave work and go to Scoochies, and then it became DV8, which was an all ages club. And that's when, yeah, we played there. I remember that. That's where I saw Fugazi. I remember back earlier, I saw Fugazi there in like 92 or something. And I remember thinking, more importantly than I'm with Beck, I'm on the same stage Fugazi was on. Yeah.
There you go. There you go. It was interesting though, because I remember walking up to the venue and Beck was just standing out front talking with people because this was in the day when Loser was just kind
Yeah.
of,
It was
you
the
know,
very first tour. Yeah, we were touring in a van. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, I mean, and weren't you roommates with him for a while?
Yeah, I was the only band member that wasn't from LA. So
Right.
he extremely graciously let me live with him. We met in Seattle through a mutual friend, and he was playing acoustic shows, and I saw him play acoustic, and we really bonded. Like, his lyrics just set off movies in my head. I traveled, when I heard those lyrics, which is still to this day what I hope to do with my own lyric writing. And the other seed of that impulse was Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which I got when I was 3 years old. And it was the soundtrack to my childhood. And I traveled, I listened to that record. So we
That
bonded over
explains a
that.
lot.
Yeah, it does. It does. I want to exist in that record's like Sergeant Pepper's space. I just want to swim in those waters for the rest of my life, basically.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so he let me live with him, and we did some four tracking together, and I wrote a song about him called Twig in the Wind, because he's this little guy, and he was in his like tornado of fame and all this stuff he had to deal with. So I kind of likened him to a twig in the wind, which turned out to be a president song we put on our second record. But yeah, so it was great. We drove, since I was out of town and whatever, we kind of became a little bit of a duo there for a minute. Like, we did radio appearances as a duo a little bit, and we drove around LA and talking about his transformation from bedroom four tracker to like major
Yeah.
label. It was almost like going to Fame school and standing next to
Right.
a Fame tornado, and then I got my own Fame tornado.
Yeah.
So it was like prep school for Fame. It
What
was
was he
great.
like as a roommate? Does he do the dishes? Does he pick up after
No,
himself?
I did the dishes for sure. I was really into a zine at the time called Dishwasher, and it was about this guy who was just living life, doing the dishes, whether it meant at the house he was crashing at or as a job at a restaurant or whatever. He just did the dishes. And so I was super into doing the dishes at the time. I still am. I'm still addicted to doing the dishes. So if
Well,
anybody out
and
there, yeah, if anybody out there has a sink full of dishes, give me a call.
all right. And interestingly enough, I was just reading that book, Our Band Could Be Your Life.
Oh yeah, Michael Azerrad.
Exactly, Michael Azerrad. I just talked to him about the Nirvana thing, but anyway, one of the stories in that, I believe, and I'm pretty sure it's the Fugazi chapter, where they realize that the trick to being able to tour on the road and have people, invite you to stay at their house and bunk with them, the secret to leaving in a good way is to do the dishes.
Totally. Doing the dishes is magical. There's that whole legend, which I'm sure I know is true, of Bill Murray. He shows up to
Oh,
people.
right. Yeah.
He walks by a party. He'll just walk in and start doing the dishes, and everyone's like, "What the hell? Bill Murray is doing the dishes." I love that. It's
You can get
fantastic.
away with it if you're Bill Murray. That's the
Yeah, that's
caveat on
true.
that one, though.
But yeah, Beck was a good roommate. That house had some problems. His other roommates were super funny and fun too. Mario Prieto is this great guy.
Mm.
When I showed up, just a little side story. It's funny. When I showed up, I flew down from Seattle. I got picked up by Joey, the drummer, driven to Beck's house, dropped off. He took off. I knock on the door and they're like, "Oh, Beck's not here. He's in London doing Top of the Pops, but come on in. We're making music for a porno movie." So I went in, and at the time, they were tapped into this way of making money to make rent. You could sell any instrumental to this company that made porn for $50. Lock, stock, and barrel. You don't own it anymore. They own everything. So they had a movie called Melon Fucking She-Males, and we we wrote the theme song, and then a whole bunch of others like Shave Me and all these songs. We had like half a dozen songs. We actually played a gig opening up for Ludafisk in LA
Mhm.
as the Melon Fucking She-Males.
That's a
So
band name.
it was fun. The toilet broke while I was there, so every morning for 2 weeks I had to poo in the ivy outside in the yard. So if anybody bought that house and they're stepping in poo, that's mine.
Wow.
These are little shards of memories. So,
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great.
but yeah,
Well,
just to wrap that up. My experience with him was just like very amazing and cosmic, and there's other stories I could tell that are. I just did an extensive interview. Somebody's writing like a really extensive biography on Beck, so I just did a pair
oh,
of
wow.
deep dives on him. So there's a lot to talk about. But anyway, we'll move
I would
on.
have been just impressed having Joey Warnaker pick me up from the airport. So,
I know. What a drummer. What a
no
drummer.
kidding.
I
Yeah.
had so much fun playing with him. He was so soulful and powerful and
Well, talk
everything.
about having music in your blood, right? I mean, come
Oh,
on.
yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
And the making music for the porn movies thing kind of reminds me of that. I don't know if it's just urban legend or if it's true, but that so many of the Seattle musicians used to work at Muzak when it
Totally
was
true.
the thing there. Yeah.
Yeah. There was music and then there was A and I music or A&I music. Actually, I used to, as a 4 tracker, I couldn't afford cassettes that were new. So I would dumpster dive behind music and it was AEI music, I think. I would dumpster dive behind those places and take all the cassettes because, they would send out cassettes to businesses
Right.
and then businesses would send it back. But after a few times, they would get rid of them because they would degrade. So that was my cassette source where the dumpsters behind that place. I never worked there, but I dumpster dived.
Wow. And I guess this should have been logical, but I didn't realize that you actually worked with Mark Sandman, and
Oh yeah.
hence the two-string git bass
Yep.
whole thing. That
Yeah.
yeah. What was he like to work with? Because he seems like a really obviously unique individual.
Yeah, he was a fantastic, another case like Beck where I got so much. I learned so much just
Yeah.
being in his presence. He also very generously let me live with him. I don't know what it was about me at the time. I think I was so skinny and
The dishes.
waif-like.
The
Yeah.
dishes.
Well, the dishes, yeah, the dishes helped. But I think also, like, I remember I used to walk the length of Manhattan in the middle of the night for entertainment, and I never got bothered or mugged or anything because I just looked like I had nothing. I was super skinny and wearing rags. So I think people like used to let me live with them because they thought I, needed a home. But anyway, Mark, yeah, I call him my musical father, really, because he showed me the two-string thing. He played a slide version on a bass, but he had a guitar version in his studio that he was toying with. And when I picked that one up, I could finger the strings and I just went, oh, this is it. I already was playing a 4-string acoustic through a bass amp. So I was kind of on my way to two strings.
Right.
He really got me down there. And what I loved about it was you could wear your influences on your sleeve and like, this is my Kiss song, this is my Buzzcock song, this is my Sex Pistols song, but it didn't sound like you were ripping anything off because it was through the filter of this weird instrument.
Right.
Oh, I love that. That really fit me perfectly because I love to genre hop and acknowledge all my influences that way. So he was super stoned a lot of the time. He smoked very crazy weed that I tried once or twice, and I was psychotic for 3 hours. So he was interesting because he could seem aloof and kind of distant, but he's just in there, kind of rolling things around and calculating and grooving on his own thoughts and. Um, my favorite thing, he had a really silly sense of humor deep down, and my favorite thing in the world was to get Mark to like throw his head back and laugh. In fact, that's why he adopted the nickname I gave him of Pez, because he was like a Pez dispenser, really laugh. So I was Casper back then, Casper Baby Pants. I had a pair of baby's pants I wore on my head, and I'd been making weird cassettes under the name Casper for years. So I became Casper Baby Pants, and so it was Casper and Pez was kind of our like stage name when we did Supergroup, which is a band where we would improvise songs for like 3 hours at the Plow and Stars in between Central and Harvard Square in Boston. We had a weekly gig there. I was a house painter by day, and I would show up with my pick. Mark would have set up all the gear. I'd show up covered with paint with my pick and just drink Guinness and play for 3 hours. So he was really generous in that way because he allowed me. He was like this stoic pillar of cool on stage, and I was like this kind of spider jumping around, playing way too complicated bass lines and singing about crazy shit. And he allowed me to do that. He didn't rein me in. He let me let my freak flag fly, which is where I found that voice of joy on stage. So yeah, big deal. I miss him.
Bet.
I miss him all the time. I think about him all the time. I think like, what would he do with Pro Tools? What would he do with AI? And I'm always thinking about what would Mark do?
Which is counterintuitive because I mean, again, given the two string, he kind of reminds me more of almost not a Luddite, but you know what I mean, that he would take Pro Tools and find a way to take out 90% of the parts and just use one chunk of it,
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I do. I use Pro Tools basically like a severely editable 24-track recording machine.
Right.
Like I treat it like tape, kind of. So I think he would do the same thing. Yeah, yeah. The beauty of limitations is another thing I learned from him. Just the whole limitations string wise. His lineup in Morphine with just baritone sax, bass, drums, like space.
You build the box, right?
Yeah,
And then and then
and
within the box you have freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the Presidents, we were playing more poppy stuff, but part of it was like taking the high strings off the guitar, taking the cymbals out of the drum set, made a hole for the lyrics and the imagery, so that the music and the imagery, which were sometimes at odds, that friction would create sparks that people wanted to, be entertained by. So all that came from Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's also, I mean, that's a thing I think of songwriting that a lot of people don't consider. You mentioned playing way too much and trying to fill up all the everything with everything.
Yeah,
Whereas a big chunk of it is carving out. It's almost like sculpting in a way. Is leaving these spaces and leaving these holes where things fit.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I'm currently really enjoying playing with in the genre or whatever the music I'm doing now. I love playing with expectations where things should get loud, but they get quiet, or, foreground and background and space with reverb and dryness and all that kind of, all those spatial relationships are super fun to play with.
Right. So I know you're not going to do, as you mentioned, any more president shows for the moment. But you guys did do, you have done a couple of reissues over the past little while.
Yeah.
Is there more stuff? I'm guessing a guy like you who saves everything must have this huge archive of stuff from which to draw. Do you have plans for more things along that line?
Yeah, the current plan is to do all of our albums on vinyl eventually in pairs. So we just did Love Everybody and Freaked Out and Small, which is the one we made while we were broken up. And then the one we made after we got back together. And then there's there's the second record, which we're working on getting. We don't own our second record. We own the debut. The deal was we didn't take a big advance. We just licensed that album to Columbia for 7 years. So we own that. Yeah, but Columbia owns the second record. And so we've just done Love Everybody and Freaked Out and Small. And then we hope to do the second record and These Are the Good Times People, maybe. Or I don't know. We're going to pair them up. We might do the second one as a standalone, but eventually they'll all end up on vinyl. And we're working with a company called Bandbox, and they do like a zine that comes with it. So all the stories behind the songs are in there, a bunch, and photos from each era that, come from our personal snapshots and stuff like that people haven't seen. I think we've kind of exhausted new music. There might be some demos or something that we can put out, but yeah, I have some really amazing archival stuff of like Dave and I rehearsing before Jason joined the band when the songs were really just barely coming together. We haven't really worked on how to, shape those into something releasable, but there's stuff lying around for sure. And yes, I am the archivist. So
Yeah, I imagine. And
yeah.
Casper Baby Pants, is that sort of, are you done, or what stage is
Yeah,
that
that
in?
I'm done. I mean, I did 19 records. I
Yeah.
played 1,300 shows and 357 songs, something like that, in 10 years.
Wow.
So I just really, and I went back into my 5,000 fragment library and really, I listened to almost every fragment in the search of bits that could become Casper songs. So I feel like I've exhausted that. Yeah, completely. Never say never.
Right.
Yeah, no, but yeah, it definitely felt like the curtain came down on that after 19 albums. So
The thing is, when I was listening to Power Trip, I mean, some of the lyrics obviously aren't for kids, but a lot of those songs to me, it could be kids' music, and in a way, some of them. I mean, is there a difference aside from, obvious lyrical
right.
things about eat your vegetables and stuff like that? Is there a difference when you're writing kids' music versus adult music?
Yeah, there's more, like I said before, like the Casper Baby Pants stuff is trying to paint a picture, and there's usually a character in that picture, and that
Hmm.
character, even if it's kind of Baba Black Sheep or whatever, I try to build in a little arc or something, maybe even musically, that is tension and resolve. But so the tension and resolve thing I'm kind of free of now. It's
Yeah.
more swimming in impressions and using more poetic license. I always talk about lyric writing in terms of like, okay, it's an elevator that goes to a basement, and there's the ground floor, which is like, I made a peanut butter sandwich and I ate it. And you know exactly what's happening, right? Okay,
Yeah.
you take the elevator down to the next floor and it's like peanut butter, me, I'm gonna eat it, or something like that. And then you get down low, it's like in the ground, there's a tuber and the tuber is brown. And, and then you can get way down to where nobody knows what the hell you're saying at all. And so it's kind of like where the song might demand or not, the song might indicate or ask for you to get off that elevator at whatever level serves the song. So I always
Yeah.
feel like Robin Hitchcock is in the sub basement all the time.
Yes, yes, that's
you know,
very
I
true.
got to I got to hang out with him and make a record or two with him and talk shop and stuff and watch him write songs. And he has a memory for every lyric. Like to him, he's going through his own scrapbook, and I love that because we just don't know what his memories are, but they are real.
Oh,
So
yes.
the cat. So yeah, that's the main difference is just being allowed to. But so this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but in my experience trying to become self-aware, and my experience being in the kids music thing and watching my first wife, get involved with this organization called PEPS, Program for Early Parent Support. It was about groups of parents getting together in neighborhoods that were new parents that were stressed out, sharing information. There's a facilitator, so it relieves stress for parents. And I became aware of that aspect of what music could do, kind of relieving stress and boredom for families and kind of keeping the entropy up. But also, humans, when they're born, are fully enlightened. You are born completely clear and connected to the entire world energetically. You don't see television, chair, rug. You see energy fields, right? You don't know the name of things, right? You don't even know the difference between the inside of your body and the outside of your body. So in some ways, that's why when I did Casper, I skewed everything to 0 to 5. I really wanted the zeros to be able to come to the show. So what I'm doing now sort of traffics in some of the same impressionistic experience. In fact, there's a song on my new record called Radiant Baby, which is really about how when we're born, we are completely arrived as far as enlightenment is concerned. So there's that theme that goes through the kids' music as far as my intention and that stuff that then blossomed out into something more concrete in this newer stuff. So yeah, there's a thread in there with babies and enlightenment that
Okay.
yeah, kind of. So, and I have friends who have kids who love this solo stuff I'm doing.
I can
My
see
friend,
that. Yeah.
yeah, in fact, Chris Robinson, one of my co-producers, his daughter only wants to hear what she calls boo music, which is Ballew music.
Ah, okay. All
Goes,
right.
boo music, boo music, boo music. And yeah, so yeah, I've heard evidence of it connecting literally with all ages.
I believe it. And last one, and then I'll let you go. Is there some sort of an ultimate dream project that you'd like to finish before you shuffle off this mortal coil?
Wow, that's a good question. I do keep having this sort of vague impression of future me where I'm a teacher or I'm doling out assignments like, all right, everybody, you've got to write a song about a porcupine that has an A major, an A minor, and a G7 in it. Go. And then everybody comes back and we listen to each song and we critique it and talk about what's happening. I imagine myself as some sort of teacher where I'm doling out limitations. No, who knows? Maybe teaching is something I might try later on. I'm just not sure. But musically, I my boxes have been checked for sure. I mean, again, I'm just being a hobbyist now and really enjoying doing it for myself. There is a part of me, like sometimes when I'm making this new music, I do fantasize, and the thought of doing it in real life is so daunting. But I do sometimes imagine as I listen back to mixes I'm working on a crowd of 50,000 people at a European festival just loving it, just like huge and big and like everybody singing, save me, whatever it is. And I think I just use that for inspiration, but a tiny little part of me was like, what would that be like? Put together like a 6 or 8 piece band and take it on a European tour circuit and just like kick out the jams. But my ears are telling me that I'm done with loud music as far
I
as
hear
that.
that. Yes, yes. Well, my site is not called Tinnitist for nothing. Yeah.
I noticed, yeah. Hearing everything all the time. Is that what the tagline is?
Yeah, with 24/7. Yes, indeed, sir. Yeah,
24/7. Right.
exactly. All right, my friend. Well, listen, I'll let you go and get on with the rest of your day. Thanks for your time and thanks for all the music. And I wish you every joy and success with everything you got going on.
Well, yeah, man, I really appreciate. I thought this was going to be maybe a little quickie interview, but it's been a pleasure talking to you, Daryl. Thanks a lot for all your interest and for helping spread the word about what I'm doing now. I appreciate it.
Uh, no sweat. My pleasure. Take care, and we'll see you somewhere down the road.
Okay, Daryl, take care.
Bye.
Bye.